Okay, greetings everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm delighted to be joined on stage with the lovely Murray Lambell, who is Chief Customer Officer at Gousto. And yeah, we're just going to have a fireside chat. All right, let's do it. Murray, please could you walk us through your career from eBay to Gousto? What learnings did you acquire by eBay that you brought through?
So I was at eBay for a very long time and learned a lot, mainly through making a ton of mistakes and learning from some really good people. I think the big thing that I enjoyed about that business was that we were really trying to find out what we wanted to stand for and made a lot of mistakes along the way that I've referenced. And then building on what was a great brand that lots of people cared about with a really good team, but then working out how we were going to do something interesting with it, which is what I think latterly we ended up doing. And then if I think about kind of where Gousto is, or where that bit of the grocery category is, it's got great people, a really interesting brand, a very good product, but needs to work out how to shape it and stand out for what it stands for. And so that's the bit I'm excited about doing and are doing and building on what's there, having learned about how some of what we did at eBay enabled us to do that, which was exciting.
Great. So could you tell us a bit more, tell the room a bit more about the Gousto story? You know, it's gone from start-up to, you know, the rise and rise, super successful now. Tell us about it, please.
So the business has been around for around 12 years. It was one of those nice stories where Timo, the founder, wasn't eating very well. He needed to eat better. He set up this company, and then it kind of that bit of the grocery category took off from there. Therefore, it captured a zeitgeist. There's been a lot of players in this space that have moved in. There was a whole growth in we're all going to be having loads of subscription services, was the language that was used at the time. And then the business, you know, how do you get a business running and surviving and doing what it does off the back of it? So growth, hyper-growth, COVID, exponential growth. You can't imagine. We're all stuck at home. We all had that feeling of repeat and rinse on what we eat, so do something different. And then really a post-COVID hangover, which was all about how do you survive and how do you keep the business running and keeping great people employed. And now we're much more in that post-COVID world, which I'm sure many of you work in and had that experience about how do we now exist in this new world where you're a more mature part of a grocery category, people understand what you do, but you now need to innovate enough to keep the product fresh and relevant. So that's kind of the story overall.
And I mean, what do you find are the challenges that perhaps, you know, you go from being a startup and a challenger, and now I would say you're definitely not a startup. You're, you know, doing really, really well. How do you keep the attention on your brand in that kind of situation?
Look, I think I didn't have the privilege of being there in the earlier years.
Yeah.
So getting a business started and building a brand that people care about is an amazing achievement. Like,
Yeah.
It's not easy. To employ a lot of people, deliver a product, it's very difficult to get fresh food into a unit, turned into a box that goes out to hundreds of thousands of individual customers every week. That's really complicated. And then on top of that, doing something that people care about. Well, why do people care about it? Because it solves a problem for them. Mm-hmm. And if you solve a problem for people, that's a good thing. And how do you keep nudging the customer forward? So the average Brit knows how to cook two things. And that's the repertoire of the average Brit. The average Brit is eating about 70% ultra-processed calories in their diet. I mean, that is the mix. Neither of those things are very good. Because if you only eat the same thing, it gets very boring and dull. And if you've got 70% of your calorie intake is UPF, that's not very good for your health. We can talk more about that if that's where the conversation goes. There's a very interesting set of insights coming out in that space. But then how do you not become preachy as a brand so that, well, you're finding a solution, but you have to innovate? Well, we innovate by providing lots of choice for you being able to personalize the nutrition for your family needs. 90% of Brits have a health concern in the household they're trying to solve for. That might be one of the family, it might be multiple members of the family, it might be all of the family. And so how do you tailor the product and give the customers a solution, but without becoming too preachy in the mix? And so there's a bunch of ways that you can do that. Sorry if
Great.
that was a bit long-winded.
No,
but-
not at all. No, it's fascinating. As Gousto's Chief Customer Officer, could you tell us about your focus on the customer at Gousto? And how do you really nail that? Because you're doing such a great job.
I used to find it really confusing when I worked with colleagues who were like, we need to be really customer focused. I was like, what do they want me to do? And I was like, do they want me to go and talk to customers a lot? Do they want me to read lots of research reports? Anyway, the way that I think about it is that I do want to talk to customers a lot. I want all of my team talking to the customer lots. But I want us to pull together what are the unique bits of the market that come together in only a way that we can solve. Now, again, these are, you feel a bit like a management consultant. Like what I'm saying is brutally obvious, but it's very, very hard to do. And I think you only ever see in your working life that come together once every couple of years. Like realistically, in a category or in a business you're working in, where you have a sweet spot. So you will have heard the anecdote, but I'll share it briefly here. I was working with a brilliant guy who ran the vehicle parts business at eBay, and he pulled together some amazing insights around legislation was changing on how insurance companies could provide car parts. We had a load of sellers on eBay who were running breaker yards or junk yards in English language for car parts, but didn't have the resource of what car parts were needed for these insurance jobs, and you had garages who wanted to use these parts but didn't know where to get them from. And he strung that together. He built this insight by understanding the market in depth, by understanding the needs of these customers here and the supply chain, and then used the tech to build a solution for that. Now, that is amazing customer insight, and that transformed that business for eBay.
Yeah.
And so the same insight has to apply in whatever category you're working to, but those are very hard to do.
It is. I mean, it often baffles me when I meet people and interview them for the drum that just how the big brands do it, but a lot of people just don't put the time in with the research, and they also don't talk to the customers. And I remember talking to someone that was working at British Gas, designing the Nest thermos, things, and she said that they had all this research, but her team leader just went out on the street when they had an idea and just literally stopped people and said, "What do you think of this?" And that was just fantastic value,
Yeah.
So
I just want to build on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when I started my career, I was called a veteran the other day, which I wasn't sure how to take that comment, but let's just ride with it for a minute. I think it meant that I'm very old and been around for far too long. And at BA, I learned from some brilliant marketeers. And one of the things that we did a lot of research at the time was we just used to go and literally sit with customers before their travel. Sit with families before they went on their holiday travel, spend time shadowing people. It was a bit weird when you were sat in someone's house and they were paying for their holiday, but nonetheless you would do that. And then I think that's kind of been lost over time, in that we think that by reading a report or watching a video or receiving some data, we know the answer, but we don't. And I've just spent a couple of months ago, we spent a few weeks out as a team literally sitting with families every day while they got home from work, prepared their dinner, and got their dinner ready. And that was amazing. Now, the answer didn't come up by me doing that, but that, combined with a bunch of other stuff, is providing some very interesting stuff.
And for sure, it gives you loads of reference points, doesn't it? And perhaps when you see other information or someone makes a suggestion, you can go yes or no based on your experience of being in that room with them.
The person in the room around a leadership table, a management table, a meeting, who says, I have been out and spoken to a customer and this is what I know, their credibility is through the roof.
Yeah.
Because no one else around the table would have done that typically.
No, absolutely. So building a brand is challenging. So how do you both educate customers and position Gousto as more than just a meal service?
Look, it goes back to that idea of what problem are you solving, and does somebody care about it enough? And how do you do it in a way that's fun?
Yeah.
So life needs to feel lighthearted. Eating is a pleasure, and eating is nuanced, and how do you just make it accessible? And for different people, that means different things.
Yeah.
So a bunch of our customers are brilliant cooks. They really know how to cook already, and they know how to kind of fly stuff together. They just need a bit more inspiration. So they want to use us for a little bit. They're like, I just need to sharpen up my repertoire and do something fun. Well, that's that group of customers. Got another big group of customers who are totally intimidated by cooking. And what's that about? So they need a different solution, and how do you talk to them, and how do you tailor to those, which is a much more hand-holding education, so that they can often, the mother in a household can feed their family better. I mean, there's slight cliche there, but there is a lot of truth in the data behind that. And so it's about making you cared for enough that you solve a problem for the customer, and then clearly they're willing to pay for that service and continue to use you. And then how do you continue to evolve that? We're in a very interesting space in the food industry right now, which is the quality of the food product we eat. We touched on it earlier with UPF, where we need to get to, and that's going to be the next wave, I think, in how we help people eat better.
I'd like to talk a little bit about technology for a second, because I'm aware that senior level marketers are kind of having to surf a tsunami of MarTech, as I see it. I mean, what's your approach to just keeping abreast of both the rapid onset of change, but also, not getting swallowed by it or drowning in it, so that you lose, the core, principles of marketing, research, strategy, tactics?
I mean, it's kind of a big question.
Yep.
As in, I was at a meeting a couple of days ago, and there were maybe 20 people around the table, none of whom worked for Gousto apart from me.
Yeah.
And we were each sharing kind of anecdotes, personal and professional, about how we were each using technology and how that had changed in the last 6 months. That's what we were asked to do. And it was mind-blowing, the kind of diversity of examples around those 20 people. And that blew my mind. I think then how I apply that in work is, it's just having conviction on the one or two things that you can do and where you want to see the change. And you're going to have to make a judgment, and you're going to have to make an experienced judgment, and then go hard after where you see there's opportunities to use technology. So I imagine during this last few days, there's been lots about AI, new AI, Gen AI, every variant of that. I get it, fine. No one's got a very clear view about what works and what doesn't work, really. I've asked so many people this question, and no one said, here's the repertoire of things that you need to do or don't need to do, in a way that's much more established in SEO was years ago. Yeah. And so that's exciting, and therefore the winners are going to be those that experiment, take some bets, and go bold where they need to.
Great. So, if I could wrap up with what's next for Gousto, what's coming up?
I mean, I'll be shocked by my PR team if I reveal anything that would be commercially confidential, of course, but look, my ambition is that it doesn't make sense that people go to the shop to buy their food, they buy too much, they don't know what they're buying, there's a ton of waste, and it's not a very good way to consume high quality nutrition. Like, just factually, humans should not really get food in that way. And it's archaic. It's like 150 years. Supermarkets have been around the UK since the 1840s in some variant or some form. The vision is that people should be able to get tailored nutrition for their need that is personalized to them and their family and what they need. And how do you do that? Now, that's complicated. And so the path is, how do you get people just to eat better quality food, which is better for their health? And then how do you do that in a way that's going to be profitable, and how do we crack that? So we now offer, as a business, we offer 200 recipes a week, which means that every single week, our factories are cleared down, reset, and we put 200 new menus available for customers to eat. Wow. It might be that needs to be 2,000 or 20,000, I don't know. Yeah. Doing 200 is complicated. It doesn't mean that the rest isn't possible. But in this vision of, I don't want consumers to do what they do today because it's not very good for them. You see that in the health of the nation. You see that in how people appear with their health credentials that sit behind it. We need to change that. And then we kind of have a role to play in making that possible. Great.
Well, Murray, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting to you and learning lots more about Gousto and your role there. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Murray from Gousto. Thank you.